All right, are you ready? Yeah, everyone. Jordan had to bounce out last minute, and Matt's taken over. Thank you so much, Matt, for filling in. We're going to talk about advancements in performance marketing. I know DFO Global is doing this is like the bread and butter for a very large multitude of brands under your portfolio, as well as the technology that you've built from them. I will just let you dive into really, probably, I'm imagining what you're up to in this space and how we're really evolving as Facebook ad costs continue to rise and as we see kind of the future of e-commerce continuing to change.
Yeah, it's interesting, and thank you for making the switch so seamlessly. I'm not nearly as handsome as Jordan, but I'll try to live up to his reputation. I am a little taller though, if you know Jordan.
Oh, there you go. All right, come on.
Yeah. Again, thanks again, Derek. I'm Matt Kresge. I run marketing at DFO. We're a lot of things. DFO is a technology company. We're a performance ad network. We do lots of media buying. We created our own e-commerce technology. We license it. We sell it. We use it ourselves. I think the most interesting thing for me about DFO anyway is that we're both an agency, a marketing agency, and an advertiser ourselves, right? So we create products, we create brands, but we also work on behalf of third-party clients to help them scale, right? Help them market their brands. And I think that offers a fairly unique perspective. And I think today, that perspective, what I've come armed with today is just three fairly simple ideas. They're not novel, they're not earth-shattering, but I think it's something that people in e-commerce and folks that are involved in e-commerce and folks that are involved with selling physical goods are always talking about. So I'll go through those and we can discuss them a little bit. And Derek, I know if you have questions or we want to save them to the end or whatever we need to do, we can do that. I think I want to start by saying that, I talked a little bit about what DFO does, but I think the brand promise that we make to clients and to ourselves is that we're really good. We're an end-to-end e-commerce solution, but we're really good at selling outside of the United States, which I think is not always at top of mind for small and medium-sized enterprises, whether you're selling $2 million a year or $10 million a year or $20 or $50 million a year, right? And so I think the first big idea that I want to explore and talk a little bit about is that e-commerce is a global phenomenon, right? We're called DFO Global for a reason. E-commerce spending in 2018 was 2.2 trillion, I think. And I believe by 2021, or is it 2022, 2020, it's supposed to double. And almost half of that, excuse me, not half of that, but outside of China and the US, the two biggest e-commerce markets in the world, there's 400 billion in e-commerce buying power in markets like UK, Germany, France, Brazil, even Canada. And I think everybody needs to be more aware of that. Derek talked a little bit about it earlier, but I think technology, making the jump to a global e-commerce point of view, technology is making that a lot easier these days. Nowadays, Facebook has like a never-ending assortment of data tools that, one, make data much more robust, but two, it makes us a lot smarter, right? So if you've got data, Google, Facebook, Instagram, native platforms make it really easy to sort of plug and play into audiences. And we've seen, especially in a performance and an affiliate model, when advertisers and when brands have data, they can really make the jump from even single-digit sales per day to double digits, triple digits, to even thousands of sales within a very, very short span of time, right? I'm not talking days, but I'm talking within a month, you can go from single-digit sales to 1,000 sales a day, right? Which is a huge jump. And I think what people need to understand, or I think what people should better understand, is that this kind of thing is doable outside of the U.S. The back end work has to be right. The banking, the translations, the fulfillment, the customer service, all that stuff needs to be on point for you to do it really well globally. But if you have those things shored up, it's becoming really easy, not really easy, it's becoming more easy to sell into global markets, right? About 40% of our revenue comes from outside of the United States. And when I started this company, I couldn't believe that. And I looked at and I double-checked the numbers, and I made sure our data guys were taking me through the right numbers. And it was. So, almost half of our revenue that we make comes from outside of the United States. I thought that was a staggering figure. And one of our brands comes to mind, and I'll tell you a little bit of just a small, quick story about this. Mind and Soul was an insole product that we developed and marketed, and it was eventually doing 8,000 to almost 10,000 sales a day. And now, if we had just targeted the U.S. market, that wouldn't have been possible, right? Mind and Soul, I want to make sure the stats are right. The six-figure sales that we had per day were selling in 32 countries in 11 languages. And again, all of the customer service and banking and translations to be able to do that outside of the U.S. were really tight and really razor sharp, right? We had everything buttoned up before we did that, but there would have been no way that we would have been able to scale that product just in the United States, right? I know there's 300 million people in the United States, but I think we really need to understand that the market is as big in other countries as it can be in the United States, right? $400 billion worth of buying power outside of China and the U.S. It's staggering to me. The other, that's one big point I think that most of you guys can resonate with. The other thing too that we're always talking about here is the product versus brand debate. We come at it a couple of different ways, and my third point will sort of cascade on what I'm going to say here, but we've found that creating a product versus creating a brand, they're very different things, right? You have to figure out what your goals are. Are your goals cash flow, or are you trying to build a legacy business or an acquisition target? When you're building a product, and again, this isn't true for us, but we've seen products in the market, they're not built to quality, they're not built for retention. But when you build a brand, the story comes into play, the customer retention comes into play, the quality, customer service, the banking, all that stuff is very critical to make a brand last and to make a brand profitable, right? So because we operate in this performance space, in this affiliate model, we've seen a lot of the model change a little bit. It's just a fact that advertisers and media buyers are not using networks in the same way that they once were. Advertisers now or affiliates, media buyers out there are starting to understand that they can create their own products, whether they're quality or not, and run traffic to them without a network, right? The barrier to entry on some of these things is really low if you know who to talk to and what to do. And if you're in it for a quick buck, it's it's a low barrier to entry to do that, right? And it's, we think that that's not the right, obviously that's not the right way to do it. And so I was talking to a few people here this morning, and I said, so what's the future of e-commerce in that way, in the products versus brands debate? And we were talking that the focus is obviously going to be on brands, but I think we're going to see the numbers seesaw a little bit as affiliates and other people with good ideas try to create brands, but fail. Right? I think that it requires a lot of, obviously we know it requires a lot of capital, it requires a lot of banking know-how, it requires a lot of customer service know-how, it requires a lot of facilitation, overseas facilitation in places like Asia to get products, to make sure that products are quality, to make sure that they're up to standards. It requires a lot of it. So I think you're going to see a lot of people try to enter the brand game in the future, but I think you're going to see people go like this and then precipitously fall because they can't keep up with the rigors of it. I think it's interesting that we're doing this today, and I read an article this morning about Gin Lane. Gin Lane is and some of you may know it out there, Gin Lane is an advertising agency, an advertising house that didn't exist, used to exist up until today. So they were responsible for a lot of big direct-to-consumer brands along the lines of Direct Smile Club and Harry's, the shave company, and the, who was it? Oh, him, hers. So a lot of the big direct-to-consumer brands this company was responsible for. And they just announced today that they're no longer in the agency marketing business. They're building brands. They're building brands themselves. They sold out of their agency business to these fairly large direct-to-consumer brands, and they're building brands themselves. Again, they're a powerhouse. They're somebody who's probably going to have a lot of success doing this because they've got a lot of knowledge and input into what it takes to make a brand like that go. But again, I think we're going to see a lot of people that aren't quite as qualified to do that. The third big idea that I think I want to explore a little bit is something I touched on a little bit earlier, but it's storytelling. And telling a good story, I think, is fairly integral. Products fulfill needs, right? So they do something for customers. We've seen competitors and we've seen other products, they hit a saturation point and they sunset, right? That's not something that brands do. We don't fall in love with products. We fall in love with brands, right? They offer a promise, an emotion. Simon Sinek is famous for saying people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. That's what brands do, right? They fulfill wants. And so I think that the future of e-commerce marketing, the way that we see it, the future of e-commerce marketing is a collection of performance data and storytelling. When you think about what a corporation looks like, and you think about a communications function within a corporation and a marketing function in a corporation, they've historically been siloed, right? Here's communication and here's marketing, and they don't really talk to each other. Marketing is responsible for advertisements, and they've got data and they've got their analytics, and communication is just that. They help tell that organization's story, whatever it is. I think the future of e-commerce marketing is bringing those two together, bringing the rigors of marketing and the rigors of storytelling, or the rigors of data and the rigors of analytics together with the storytelling that communications can bring, right? And so getting out of those silos and getting into that storytelling kind of framework, I think, is the future. I have two fairly good examples that I read recently as to why some of that stuff is happening. Anheuser-Busch AB InBev is the world's largest beverage distributor. Bud Light, Budweiser. They've got something like 40 plus beer brands, and they decided to end their relationships with a lot of their creative agencies because they decided to bring performance marketing in-house, because they decided to bring a lot of their marketing function in-house. And it's interesting because you've never seen a brand like this do that. You're still seeing commercials for Budweiser and Michelob Ultra on TV, but you're seeing brands very much more closely understand that performance marketing, the ability to drive results, to drive sales, to drive eyes, to drive and earn attention for a brand, is focused not on brand advertising, which is how many likes and how many viewers I've got and how many retweets I can get, but on the performance side, which is correlated to a metric, right? Correlated to sales, correlated to clicks, correlated to conversions. And so to see a giant like AB InBev do something like that sort of opens our eyes to what the future looks like in the space. It's also interesting, and I just saw it this morning too. Edelman is the world's largest communications firm, and historically they've always been they're a brand marketer, right? They're public relations and marketing, and they'll get you a story at the top fold of the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, or get your spokesperson quoted on CNBC or whatever it is. They just announced they were doing a partnership with Cision, which is a technology platform used in the public relations space that essentially is a giant database of reporters' names and influencers and all the kinds of people that help tell a brand story that aren't those brands, what public relations thinks of as affiliates anyway. Writers, influencers, podcasters, that sort of thing. And they created a partnership with them to eke out the kind of data and performance that it takes to very rigorously convince Fortune 500 companies and Fortune 100 companies that going with an agency, you're going to see real results, right? You're going to see real performance metrics, not just we got you quoted on CNBC, or we got you a story above the fold in the Wall Street Journal, but that this marketing that we're doing, the things that we're doing on your behalf, have a real dollar value. You can actually see the change that comes about from using a service like that. Again, these examples are all over the place, but those are the big three. To recap, I think it's going global. It's something that e-commerce is doing. It's something that we do really well. It's very interesting to see the kind of traction that products and services can get outside of the United States. And if there's folks interested out there, please come to us and say you talked to us and you heard us speak on Derek's podcast, and we're happy to talk about that too. The products versus brand debate, it's one that's been raging in e-commerce since the internet was invented. And the storytelling, right? The rigors of communication, the rigors of storytelling mixed with the rigors of marketing and data and analytics. I know I'm super short on time, but again, getting back to that, Derek, hi.
Hello. No, that's amazing, and I think you're spot on with that communications, agency doing that. I've worked with so many different communications agencies, and they just literally say to you, like, we got you placed in 10 newspapers, 10 outlets, and that's the reporting metric. And I'm like, okay, how many products did that sell? Like, did it increase organic traffic at all? Like,
they're starting to understand that chief marketing officers and chief communications officers and the C-level folks at some of these large brands that's not good enough. They have shareholders that they're beholden to. That's not good enough to to convince somebody to spend $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million a month. They have people to appease, and they need actual hard and fast metrics. It's the change, I think, has come it was a steep curve, and the change is coming very quickly.
Hey, John, just 1 second. I'm going to stop your video and mute you, and we'll bring you in just a second. Wait.
Oh, you muted me.
Matt's video by accident. Sorry, Matt. John, I'm stopping your video for a second.
There we go.
Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, we'll bring John in just a sec. Let's actually continue down this rabbit hole. So, I mean, performance metrics, the thing about communications and about brand marketing is that it does have an impact, but it's harder to trace, and it should lead to performance at some point. So what do you say to somebody that wants to grow a social following or does want video views or something like that? Like, where is the line between performance and brand? When should we invest into brand, if at all?
Again, the storytelling aspect of that is critical, right? People are passionate about brands. People buy on belief. I'm a Simon Sinek convert, right? I think that I want to do business with people who think like me, who do the same things as me. I want to believe. I want to buy and do business with people who believe what I want to believe. It's table stakes. If you're building a brand, it's table stakes to have your brand and your story collected and adhered to, and whether you're marketing it yourselves or you have an agency or you have affiliates, it's critical that those people know your brand story and the things that they can say and cannot say. But it has to marry with performance metrics. Nobody builds sure, you can build a brand on a whim to see what it looks like and to have fun with it, but people build brands because they have a good idea and they want to fill a need and they want to make money. Right. So the line is, I mean, if we're talking about a pie chart here, I think it's split right down the middle. I think you, depending on where you are in a brand, where you are building it or where you are in its life cycle, and not to say that it should even have a life cycle, but where you are depends on that percentage where you should be focused on a brand story or focused on the actual metrics of getting sales. They've both got to be at the top of mind for people who are doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're saying is that a good brand story is bringing people into sales. This just reminds me of the Harmon Brothers videos. And I think Karen Chen later today is going to talk about her viral video strategy, which is very comparable, which is this video is going to get millions of views, but it needs to drive revenue. And the only way to do that is to tell a great story while selling at the same time. They shouldn't be separate. So when you see these like more fluffy pieces, maybe, you know, the bigger guys like AT&T and maybe even Anheuser-Busch in the past and like Ford, they're doing these commercials that are telling a story, but the product's just kind of there off in the background. It's not closing a deal, right? And I think the future is smacking them, like you said, really strong together so that they're not like brand awareness with a story, but the story is the sale.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if a company like Apple, and I'm obviously they're a super valuable company, but imagine if a company like Apple, whom markets from the inside out with the why first, we think differently, and oh, by the way, we just happen to sell computers and phones and other really high-tech devices. Like, maybe you want to buy one? Imagine if a company like that brought in a performance element to their marketing. Imagine what they could achieve and imagine what they could see out of something like that. They could see that their brand story is resonating with people and it's translating to sales. It's translating to sales in this market or in this market. It really is. I think it's the future.
I love it. Matt, thank you so much for covering for Jordan, for hopping in here, for telling us the story of DFO and what you guys have been able to accomplish. I am jealous. I always like learning from you guys. I love the mantra because I do think maybe 10 years ago, and there's a lot of people still left building products without brands. And I think it's wise to start talking about the future of e-commerce being like, if there's no brand, there's no revenue, because the competition is increasing and those opportunities and the margins are coming crashing down on you.
Yeah, it's razor thin in that regard. And everybody can, again, like I said earlier, the barrier to entry is fairly low on some of this stuff. You can build a low quality product and sell it. You're going to have a lot of trouble with customer service and a lot of trouble with returns, and your banking's going to get crushed and you're going to get crushed. So, but you can do it.
Yeah.
But you know, that's where it's heading, and it's fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we had Phil Ruru on earlier. He ran a e-commerce store doing 10 million a year in revenue, but it didn't have a brand. It was a discounting store. Him and his business partner took home at the end of the year. I don't know if how much he wants me to share about this. He said it before publicly, pretty sure. But between the two of them, they took home about $100,000 each at the end of the year on a $10 million store. So you think you're making a lot of money, but when you actually look at, you know, the revenue, it's the equivalent of a regular job, except the volatility on that margin, you know, like you said, one banking issue, one bad customer service complaint could tank the whole business.
It shuts you down, and that's why we love e-commerce, because again, we're in the media buying and marketing industry, and I find that you're not fighting an account battle any longer when you're doing e-commerce. You're fighting a marketing battle. You're finding avenues and ways to figure out how to earn attention and how to earn sales. And the story that you just pointed to, I'm sure they didn't have any trouble, but the fact is that folks do have trouble. One issue can shut you down for 3 or 4 months. You might be doing $1 million in sales per month, but you might only get 3 or 4 months out of the 12 out of that, right? You might be fighting a 7th or 8th month battle if you're just selling on Facebook or just selling on Google or whatever it is, or your banking crashes and you know, you have no cash to get more inventory or whatever the problem is, right? So we find that with e-commerce, you get to fight a marketing battle, which in my opinion is a much sexier and much more fun battle to fight than to be on a rep with Facebook for, you know, 12 hours trying to get your account back up.
Yeah, or having to fly to PayPal headquarters, which I think is what Jordan said in the last time he talked. Hey, can I have that?
Of the behemoth that is PayPal, or you know, whatever it is. So yeah, it's a much more fun battle, and it's a much less stressful battle.
Awesome, Matt. I've got the link here. I'm going to share with everyone to DFO. Where can people get a hold of you?
We are info@dfo.global. I'll send my address around, matthew.kresge@dfo.global. Our website also has lots of form capture instances in it. Please just shoot us a note. It all comes to me. I see everything, so I can say hello, and we can route you to the right people. Or if you just want to follow up and say hello, please do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I will let you go.